grand corporate party takes place inside a luxurious glass tower, where a powerful billionaire flaunts his arrogance before a hushed crowd. A janitor quietly works in the background, ignored until a cruel challenge is thrown at him. His calm dignity unsettles the room, setting the stage for a clash no one expects. "Hey janitor, translate this and I'll marry you." The words sliced through the golden glow of the ballroom like broken glass. Laughter erupted instantly, rich voices echoing against chandeliers that sparkled like captured stars. Waiters froze mid-step, carrying trays of champagne, their eyes darting nervously toward the man who had spoken. At the center of the marble lobby, beneath a towering chandelier dripping crystals, stood Gregory Hemsworth, a billionaire whose reputation stretched across continents. His tuxedo was stitched with arrogance, his smirk sharper than any blade. In one hand, he swirled a crystal glass of brandy. In the other, a folded piece of paper he held out like bait. The target of his mockery was a man no one usually noticed, Samuel Carter, the night janitor. He wore a faded navy uniform, sleeves rolled neatly, a mop bucket beside him like an old companion. He had been wiping the edge of the marble floor when Gregory's voice cut through the hall. The guests turned. Silence pressed against Samuel's shoulders. Gregory waved the paper. This contract in Mandarin. Translate it. Right here. Right now. If you get it right, you can have my hand in marriage. His smirk widened, and laughter thundered again, bouncing off polished glass walls. The crowd of investors, models, and politicians reveled in his cruelty. Samuel's hand stilled on the mop handle. His calm brown eyes lifted slowly toward the billionaire. He didn't flinch, didn't laugh, didn't bow his head. He simply looked. That quiet stare unsettled more than Gregory's thunderous voice ever could. Someone whispered, "Why him? He's just the janitor." Another chuckled. "Because it's hilarious. Look at him, probably can't spell his own name." Gregory leaned back against the velvet sofa, arrogance oozing. "Come on, janitor. I'll give you one chance. Impress us or go back to scrubbing floors where you belong." The ballroom lights seemed to dim, leaving Samuel in quiet focus under the chandelier. His mop dripped once against the marble, a small sound in a hall of cruel laughter. Samuel finally spoke, voice calm, steady, unshaken. "Is this what power means to you, turning knowledge into a circus?" The laughter faltered for the first time. A few guests exchanged uncertain glances. Gregory's smirk tightened, just a hair. "Oh, so the janitor talks. How poetic. But this isn't about philosophy. It's about worth. Translate it, or admit you're nothing." Samuel walked forward slowly, each step echoing on the marble. He didn't touch the paper yet. His gaze held Gregory's, unwavering. Behind him, waiters leaned in, hushed. A young woman in a silver dress whispered, "He doesn't look afraid." Gregory tilted his glass and downed the last of his brandy, mocking. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Don't waste our time." Samuel reached out at last, fingertips brushing the folded paper. The crowd leaned forward, eager for his failure, but before unfolding it, Samuel said one line, soft, powerful, and cutting through the silence like thunder through still air. "You mistake silence for ignorance." Gasps rippled across the room. Gregory laughed loudly, masking the faint crack in his confidence. "Big words. Let's see if you can back them up. Read it. Right now." Samuel's hands moved calmly, unfolding the paper. His lips parted as though he were about to speak, and then the ballroom door swung open with a heavy boom. Every head turned. The man who stepped inside carried an air sharper than any jewel in the hall. He wasn't dressed like the glittering guests. His dark tailored suit was crisp, purposeful. His eyes found Samuel instantly, and something passed between them, recognition, almost reverence. Whispers rushed through the crowd. "Who's that? Wait. I think I've seen him before. Isn't that the CEO of Carter Global?" Samuel's hand stilled on the contract, his calm expression unchanged. Gregory's smirk faltered for the first time. The billionaire didn't know yet. He had just mocked the wrong man. The ballroom's laughter didn't recover. It hovered, broken and uncertain, as the tall man in the tailored suit walked past the gilded doors and into the glittering hall. Every step carried a weight that silenced whispers and pressed on lungs. He didn't look at Gregory Hemsworth, nor at the crowd clutching their champagne flutes nervously. His eyes locked only on Samuel Carter, the janitor still holding the unfolded contract. Gregory straightened in his velvet chair, his smirk returning like a mask hastily reapplied. Well, if it isn't Richard Hawley. Didn't know you were invited. A ripple of recognition moved through the guests. Richard Hale, CEO of Carter Global, one of the fastest rising multinational firms. A man rumored to have sealed billion-dollar deals before breakfast. To see him here, unannounced, was enough to send murmurs spilling across the marble. But Richard didn't answer Gregory. He stopped beside Samuel. His gaze softened just slightly. I didn't expect to find you here tonight. Samuel inclined his head politely, calm as ever. His voice remained steady, low enough that the crowd had to lean in to hear. Sometimes the floor has to be clean before the ceiling can shine. Gasps fluttered through the crowd. The metaphor cut deeper than it seemed, landing squarely on Gregory's pride. Gregory chuckled, too loud, trying to smother his unease. What is this? Some kind of performance art? The janitor speaks in riddles, and now the CEO plays along? Come on, Richard, you of all people should know the difference between a boardroom and a broom closet. Richard finally turned his gaze on Gregory. His eyes were cold steel under the chandelier's gold. And you, Gregory, of all people, should know the difference between respect and ridicule. The silence was heavy. Some guests shifted uncomfortably, their laughter now ghosts clinging to the edges of their lips. A waiter carrying champagne nearly tripped from the tension pressing the room. Gregory forced another laugh, though his grip tightened on his empty glass. Respect? We're talking about a janitor here. You want me to bow? He leaned forward, his voice sharp with cruelty. He scrubs your dirt. He cleans after your mess. He's not worth the air of this conversation. Samuel didn't move, didn't break. His hands rested gently on the contract, eyes calm but unyielding. Richard, however, leaned in slightly, his voice deliberate. Funny, you mock him for cleaning floors. But when your investors call me tomorrow, begging to know why your translation failed, who do you think they'll call for help? The crowd's whispers grew frantic. Wait, translation? What does he mean? Gregory's smirk twitched, the first hairline crack. You think he can, what? Read Mandarin? Samuel's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. He looked at the contract, traced one line with his finger, then lifted his gaze. The first sentence isn't about numbers. It's about trust. He spoke the line aloud, fluent, sharp. Every syllable of Mandarin crisp and commanding. The room froze. A collective intake of breath filled the hall. For a moment, silence was total. Then came the shocked murmurs. He speaks it. Fluent? Perfect accent. Gregory's face paled beneath the golden glow. His laugh came out strangled. So you memorized a phrase or two? Cute trick. It proves nothing. But Samuel wasn't performing. He spoke again, this time weaving through the second clause, unfolding the legal nuances like a man who knew every corner of the language. His tone was effortless, natural, as if the paper in his hand were written his own tongue. The guests leaned in, breathless. Investors nodded instinctively, recognizing competence. Waiters forgot their trays, eyes wide in admiration. Gregory's mask was slipping fast. His jaw clenched as he barked, Enough! This is ridiculous. He's a janitor, not a linguist. Richard's reply was like a knife sliding quietly across glass. Or maybe he's both. And maybe the real question is why a janitor reads contracts better than a billionaire who signs them. A wave of murmurs surged through the ballroom. Some guests stifled laughter. Others simply stared at Gregory, their admiration bleeding away like wine spilled on white cloth. Samuel folded the paper neatly, setting it on the velvet table without flourish. His voice remained soft, but every word rang with quiet authority. You asked me to translate. I did. Now the question is, what do you fear more? That I could, or that I just did? The silence that followed was suffocating. Gregory's hand trembled around his glass, though he hid it with another forced smirk. But before he could retort, Richard Hawley leaned forward, voice sharp as steel. "Gentlemen and ladies, remember this night. Because what you just witnessed isn't humiliation. It's history beginning." Eyes turned back to Samuel, whose calm presence seemed suddenly larger than the chandelier itself. Gregory swallowed hard. For the first time, the billionaire looked small in his own empire. The chandelier's crystals no longer sparkled the same way. Where moments ago they scattered golden light over a laughing crowd, now they seemed to glare down, reflecting tension sharp enough to cut glass. Gregory Hemsworth's knuckles tightened around his glass as if crushing it might restore his control. The guests' whispers swirled like storm winds. Investors exchanged looks, serious, calculating. A young woman in emerald silk whispered, "If he translated that perfectly, what else does he know?" Samuel Carter stood quietly, contract folded neatly, his mop bucket still by the edge of the marble. His uniform was plain, but the room no longer saw just a janitor. His calm had begun to erode Gregory's performance of power. Gregory forced a chuckle, brittle as cracked porcelain. "Well, congratulations. You've memorized a few lines. I suppose we should all clap for the janitor." The laughter he expected didn't come. Only silence. Only stares. Richard Hawley stepped closer, his voice low, deliberate. "This isn't a parlor trick, Gregory. That contract is authentic, one of the same documents your board begged me to review last week." And he read it fluently, clause by clause. Gregory's smirk faltered. "What game are you playing, Richard? Trying to embarrass me in my own tower?" "No," Richard said, his eyes still fixed on Samuel. "But I think you've already done that yourself." Gasps rippled. Guests shifted uneasily, caught between loyalty to Gregory's wealth and the quiet authority Samuel exuded. Samuel finally spoke, his voice soft but carrying through the hall. "Respect isn't about where you stand in the room. It's about how you stand when the room turns against you." For a moment, silence reigned. Then, unexpectedly, a faint clap broke it hesitant, from the far side of the ballroom. An older investor, spectacles glinting, applauded once, twice. Others followed, scattered, uneasy but undeniable. Gregory's face flushed crimson. "Enough!" His voice thundered, desperate. "This man cleans floors. You think he belongs in our world?" Richard's reply was calm, cutting. "Perhaps he belongs more than you. After all, he built something worth listening to." The words landed like a hammer. Whispers surged again. "Built something? What does he mean? Wait, who is this janitor?" Gregory saw the shift and panicked. He rose suddenly, slamming his glass onto the table. The sound cracked through the silence, startling waiters into dropping silver trays. "You're all fools. Do you not see? He's nothing but a custodian. A prop, a nobody." Samuel didn't flinch. He looked Gregory in the eye and spoke evenly. "The floor you walk on doesn't complain when you step on it. But the higher you build glass walls, the sharper they shatter when cracks appear." The chandelier's crystals trembled faintly as if agreeing. A hush fell heavy. Guests held their breath. Richard smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly, and said, "Careful, Gregory. Some cracks are invisible until it's too late." Gregory's jaw tightened. He tried to laugh, but it came out strained. "You think this changes anything? Tomorrow I'll still own this tower. I'll still sign the deals. And he'll be scrubbing my floors again." Samuel's calm deepened, like still water hiding unseen depths. "You mistake titles for destiny. The truth is titles change, but character doesn't." His words lingered, echoing through marble and glass. Then, from the back of the room, a journalist raised her phone, recording quietly. Another investor whispered to her assistant, "Call the board. They need to see this," Gregory noticed. Panic sharpened his voice. "Stop recording. This is private." But the tide had turned. The very people who once laughed now leaned toward Samuel, eyes bright with curiosity, respect, even admiration. The janitor who had been invisible an hour ago was now the axis of the evening, Gregory's hand trembled against the velvet armrest. He looked at Samuel calm, unreadable, and for the first time, Gregory saw not a janitor, not an employee, but a man who could unravel him with silence alone. The billionaire swallowed hard, forced a grin, and leaned forward. His voice dropped low, venomous. "You've made me look like a fool tonight. But don't mistake this moment for victory. You don't know who you're dealing with." Samuel's reply was quiet, almost a whisper, but it carried through the hall like thunder rolling over a valley. "Neither do you." The crowd stilled again, every ear bent toward him. Gregory blinked, confusion flickering, because Samuel's words didn't sound like the voice of a janitor. They sounded like the voice of a man who had been watching, for this exact moment. The ballroom had become a battlefield of silence. The music that once floated through the air was forgotten. The string quartet now sitting frozen in their seats, bows poised but unmoving. The guests no longer cared for champagne or chandeliers. Every eye was fixed on the janitor who spoke like a scholar, and the billionaire who was unraveling in real time. Gregory Hemsworth clung to his arrogance as though it were a life raft. He forced a crooked smile, his voice ringing false against the marble walls. "Let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen. We came here tonight for business, not bedtime stories. This man, this janitor, is nothing but a distraction. A stunt. And you're letting him steal your attention from what matters." But the murmurs around him told a different story. What if he isn't a stunt? He speaks Mandarin fluently. There's something more here. Gregory's voice cracked slightly. He slammed his hand on the velvet table. "He cleans floors." "That's it. I hired him to mop up after you." Samuel's calm never wavered. His eyes were steady, his voice even. "If cleaning floors made me less of a man, then standing on them doesn't make you more of one." The line struck like lightning. Whispers turned into audible gasps. A woman in diamonds whispered to her husband, "Did you hear that?" He nodded silently, unable to look away. Gregory tried to laugh, but the sound came hollow, brittle. "Oh, he's clever. Very clever. But clever words don't sign contracts or close deals." Richard Hawley finally stepped forward, breaking the tension with a voice that cut through the noise like a blade. "No, Gregory. But wisdom does. And I'd wager Samuel knows more about your deals than you'd ever admit." The crowd erupted into murmurs again, restless, eager. Someone asked aloud, "Wait, how does Richard know his name?" Gregory froze, face pale. What did you call him?" Richard's eyes glinted. "Samuel Carter." "Surprised you never asked." The room fell utterly silent. Gregory's lips parted, confusion mingling with dread. "Carter? No, you can't mean." Samuel looked directly at Gregory, his calm unbroken. "You never asked who I was. You only saw what uniform I wore." The chandelier above seemed to hum in the silence. Guests looked at one another, realization dawning in fragments. "Carter? Like Carter Global? No, it can't be." But what if? Gregory's composure cracked. He pointed at Samuel, his voice desperate, angry. "You're lying. He's a janitor. He's nothing more than." Samuel stepped closer, his presence towering though his tone remained gentle. "Truth doesn't need volume. It only needs time. And time always runs out." The words cut deeper than any shout. Gregory stumbled back a step, nearly tripping over the edge of the velvet rug. Cameras flashed now, journalists capturing every moment, investors recording every word. Gregory waved his arms wildly, sweat beading his forehead. "Stop filming. This is my party. My tower, my rules." But the crowd no longer listened. Their loyalty was shifting, pulled silently toward Samuel like iron to a magnet. Richard leaned toward Gregory, voice soft but lethal. "You wanted to humiliate him. Instead, you've introduced him. And the world will not forget his name." Samuel stood still in the center of it all, not raising his voice, not demanding attention, yet commanding it effortlessly. Gregory's chest rose and fell rapidly. His empire, built on control and intimidation, felt like sand slipping through his fingers. He turned to the crowd, searching for support, but their eyes betrayed him. A guest whispered too loudly, "What if he really is a Carter?" Gregory spun back toward Samuel, his voice cracking. Who are you? Tell them. Tell them you're no one. The room stilled again, waiting, breathless. Samuel's silence stretched long enough to make hearts pound. Finally, his calm voice cut through the golden air. I am exactly who you think I'm not. Gasps rippled like waves through the ballroom. Faces paled, others lit with awe. Even the string quartet, still clutching their instruments, leaned forward as if music itself had been replaced by revelation. Gregory staggered back another step. His smirk was gone. His mask was gone. For the first time, the billionaire looked like a man staring at the edge of collapse, and Samuel, still in his janitor's uniform, still with the mop bucket at his side, looked like the only man who had ever truly owned the room. The ballroom had turned into a storm of whispers. Names darted across the golden air like sparks. Carter. Could he really be? Why would someone like him? Gregory Hemsworth's face flushed crimson as he spun in circles, trying to command an audience that no longer belonged to him. Stop it, all of you. He's a fraud, nothing but a janitor with a trick up his sleeve. But the more he shouted, the smaller he seemed. The more Samuel remained still, silent, calm, the larger he became. Richard Hawley stepped forward, his voice measured, but carrying the weight of truth. Ladies and gentlemen, I can confirm what many of you are suspecting. Samuel Carter isn't just a name. It is the name. Gasps flooded the room. Guests leaned into one another, eyes wide. Investors dropped their champagne glasses, crystal shattering across marble. Gregory's voice broke into a frantic laugh. No, no, no. You expect us to believe that the heir of Carter Global is mopping my floors? Don't be absurd. Richard's eyes never left Samuel. Absurd isn't the right word. Strategic is. Samuel finally lifted his gaze to the chandelier above, its crystals gleaming like 1,000 unblinking eyes. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried over every corner of the room. You never see the foundation until the tower begins to lean. A hush swept the hall. People leaned forward, hungry for more. The janitor's uniform, once a badge of invisibility, now looked like armor hiding a truth too heavy for Gregory's arrogance to bear. Gregory trembled, his fists tightening. You're lying. You're nothing but a man who got lucky with a phrase or two. Admit it, you're no Carter. Samuel stepped closer, his shadow now stretching across Gregory's velvet chair. His calm eyes locked onto Gregory's panicked ones. You want me to deny myself because you cannot face yourself. The line sliced sharper than glass. The guests murmured in awe. Someone clapped once, then twice. Applause spread slowly, like fire across dry grass. Gregory's face drained of color. You can't just... Richard cut him off, his tone deadly calm. Gregory, do you know why Carter Global rises while your empire teeters? Because Samuel has walked where no CEO dares walk. He's seen the ground level. He's spoken to those you step on. He knows what the tower looks like from the floor and from the top. The weight of those words pressed on the guests. Many bowed their heads, ashamed of their laughter from earlier. Gregory tried again, desperation leaking into every syllable. Even if he is who you say he is, why would he be here? Why mop floors when he owns half the contracts in this city? Samuel's calm deepened into something heavier, almost uncheckable. He placed one hand gently on the mop handle. His voice, soft, steady, reverberated like thunder hidden inside a mountain. Because no tower should forget the hands that built its base. The words hit like scripture. Guests nodded, some even whispering prayers under their breath. Gregory staggered back, sweat trickling down his temple. His voice dropped low, venomous. You think they'll choose you over me? You think words will replace wealth? Samuel's gaze never wavered. Wealth without worth is only weight. And weight always collapses. The ballroom's tension snapped into applause, louder this time. Surging, undeniable. Gregory's smirk shattered completely. He looked at the crowd, his crowd, and found only doubt, betrayal. But none of the loyalty he once commanded. He turned back to Samuel, shaking now. If you're really who you say you are, prove it. Show them. Or admit this was all a trick. The hall froze again, every breath caught in waiting. Even Richard's eyes flicked to Samuel. Curious. Samuel stepped forward into the chandelier's glow, his janitor's uniform glowing against the gold. His calm voice lowered, intimate, yet sharp enough to pierce the silence. "Very well, Gregory. If it is proof you want, then proof you will get." He reached into his pocket slowly. Every eye followed his hand. The room leaned forward, breath suspended. Gregory's lips parted, trembling. "What are you?" Samuel drew out a folded envelope, black, sealed with a golden crest. Gasps filled the ballroom. The crest glinted unmistakably under the chandelier. Carter Global's insignia. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed wildly. Investors surged forward to glimpse the seal. Gregory's knees buckled against the velvet chair. He stared, pale, broken, at the envelope that symbolized everything he'd mocked. Samuel held it in his hand with quiet certainty. His calm voice carried above the chaos. "This is not about titles. It's about truth. And truth has been waiting long enough." The hall fell into stunned silence again. Hanging on the edge of revelation, the black envelope gleamed beneath the chandelier, its golden crest catching the light like a silent trumpet. Conversations in the ballroom stuttered, then stopped altogether. Every breath waited. Every eye burned with expectation. Gregory Hemsworth's hands twitched at his sides, fists curling and uncurling. His voice cracked through the silence, sharp and ragged. Don't be fooled. Anyone can forge a seal. It's just wax and gold. This is a circus trick, nothing more." But no one moved to agree. No one laughed. The investors, the models, the politicians, all of them leaned closer, their curiosity stronger than Gregory's authority. Richard Hall at Samuel's side, his gaze locked on the envelope. "That seal is real. I've seen it 100 times in boardrooms. And I know what it means when Samuel chooses to bring it here." Gregory's breath quickened. He lunged a step forward, voice desperate. "Give it to me. If it's real, then let me hold it." Samuel's calm eyes met his, and with a steady hand he drew the envelope back against his chest. His voice remained soft, yet it carried across the marble like a drumbeat. "Truth doesn't belong to the one who yells loudest. It belongs to the one who waits longest." The words rippled through the crowd. A woman in pearls whispered, "He's not even raising his voice, but I feel it in my bones." Gregory's mask cracked further. His face twisted, veins tightening at his temple. "You think you can humiliate me? In my tower? In front of my people?" Samuel's reply was quiet, deliberate. "They are not yours. They only stood beside you until they saw who you were. Tonight they see." The crowd murmured louder, some nodding, others whispering fiercely. Phones lit up, cameras recording, streams already going live. Gregory's empire was bleeding in real time. Gregory's composure snapped. He lunged at Samuel, his hand outstretched to seize the envelope. Gasps broke out as guests stumbled back, but Samuel did not flinch. He held the envelope firmly, his calm presence unshaken as Gregory's fingers stopped inches away. Richard stepped in sharply, voice like thunder. "Careful, Gregory. Desperation exposes more than any document ever could." Gregory froze, his outstretched hand trembling in midair. The guests stared, wide-eyed, at the billionaire reduced to a frantic child grasping at proof he could not control. Samuel slowly lowered the envelope to the velvet table between them. His voice, steady as stone, filled the silence. "You mocked me with paper. Tonight, paper unmasks you." Gasps rippled again. A waiter dropped a glass, shattering the hush. Gregory's face twisted into rage. "Open it then. Show them. Let's end this pathetic charade." Samuel looked around the room, his gaze sweeping over the faces, hungry, doubtful, reverent. His calm eyes lingered on the chandelier before lowering back to Gregory. "You want me to open it now, in front of them?" Samuel asked. Gregory sneered. "Unless you're afraid." Samuel's faint smile held a quiet fire. "Afraid?" "No, patient." With careful hands he broke the golden seal. The sound was sharp, final, like chains snapping. The crowd held its breath. He unfolded the document slowly. The parchment shimmered under the chandelier, official lines written in Mandarin and English. The Carter Global insignia stamped across the header left no room for doubt. Gregory staggered backward, his lips trembling. No, this isn't possible. Richard's voice rang clear, slicing the air. It's more than possible. It's the truth. You mocked Samuel Carter as a janitor. And tonight, the world sees him as what he truly is. Phones flashed. Guests gasped. Some cheered. Others simply stared at Gregory, their respect shattered, their loyalty gone. Gregory's chest heaved, sweat beading his brow. His empire, his mask, his identity, everything slipped through his fingers. You set me up. This was your plan all along. Samuel folded the document neatly, placing it back into the envelope. His calm eyes met Gregory's one last time. No, Gregory. This was never my plan. This was your mirror. The room thundered with applause, unstoppable now. Investors rose to their feet. Waiters clapped. Even the string quartet tapped their bows against their instruments. Gregory staggered back, pale, humiliated, his power collapsing in real time. He opened his mouth to scream, but no words came, and then through the roar of the applause a deep, commanding voice boomed from the back of the hall. Enough. The words silenced the crowd instantly. Heads turned toward the doorway. Another figure had entered. Tall, stern, familiar. The chairman of the International Board of Investors, the man who could end Gregory's empire with a single decision. The femme. Ballroom hushed as the tall man strode forward. His black suit cut sharp against the marble, his silver hair gleaming under the chandelier. Every investor rose instinctively, some bowing their heads. The air grew heavy, like judgment itself had entered. Gregory's mouth trembled. Chairman Watanabe. Why, you weren't supposed to be here. The chairman's eyes, dark and unreadable, swept across the room before settling on Gregory. His voice was calm, but every syllable carried the weight of continence. Business of this scale is never confined to invitations, Gregory. It reaches where it must. The guests whispered fiercely. Phones stopped recording. For the first time that evening, silence wasn't driven by spectacle, but respect. Gregory's hands shook as he forced a laugh. This is all a misunderstanding. A performance. He jabbed a trembling finger at Samuel. He's not who you think he is. The chairman turned to Samuel. His gaze lingered, studying the man who had stood calmly through humiliation and applause alike. Samuel Carter, he said slowly, as though testing the name. I have heard whispers. Tonight I see proof. Samuel bowed his head slightly. I am honored, Chairman. But this night was never meant to prove me. It was meant to expose truth. The words sank into the room like ink in water, spreading, staining. Gregory burst forward, sweat streaking his temple. You can't take his word over mine. I built this empire. I hosted this gala. He is nothing. The chairman's gaze sharpened. A man who mocks service is already nothing. A man who mistakes arrogance for power has already lost it. The crowd gasped. Gregory's face drained of color, his body trembling with barely restrained fury. Samuel remained still, his calm presence a sharp contrast to Gregory's unraveling. His voice, low but resonant, carried across the marble. When a man sweeps floors, he clears space for others to walk. When a man mocks him, he only dirties his own path. The ballroom erupted in murmurs. Some clapped softly, unable to resist. The chairman's lips curled into the faintest smile. Wise words, Carter. Words not of ambition, but of vision. Gregory's desperation boiled over. He slammed his fist onto the velvet table, rattling glasses and making the golden-sealed envelope quiver. Enough of this poetry. I demand this farce be stopped. Chairman, remove this janitor before he poisons what I've built. The chairman leaned closer, his voice suddenly sharp. Gregory, do you even hear yourself? You are not defending a company, you are defending your pride. The words cut deeper than any blade. The crowd stared at Gregory as if seeing him for the first time, not a titan, but a child clutching at scraps. Richard Halla stepped forward, voice ringing clear. Chairman, I witnessed everything. Gregory mocked a man he believed powerless. Samuel held dignity when all odds turned against him. That is the mark of true leadership. Not wealth. Not arrogance. But dignity. The hall shook with applause. Even the hesitant joined in now, the tide irreversible. Gregory's face twisted in horror as his empire slipped like sand through his fists. He turned to the chairman, his last card trembling on his lips. I am still the controlling shareholder. You cannot strip me of that. The chairman's eyes narrowed. Control is not only in numbers. It is in trust. And tonight your trust is broken. Gasps swept the hall. Investors whispered, some already dialing, some already nodding. Gregory's world shrank. Samuel finally stepped forward, his calm voice quieting the storm. This was never about seats or shares, Gregory. It was about respect. You offered mockery. I offer partnership. His eyes swept the hall, landing on the investors, the journalists, the board. Those who wish to walk with me, walk with dignity. The applause thundered, uncontainable now. Gregory staggered back, his empire collapsing not with fire, but with silence. Then, the chairman raised a hand, silencing the hall instantly. His voice boomed with finality. The board will convene tonight. And by dawn, Gregory Hemsworth's fate and Samuel Carter's future will be sealed. The room froze. Gregory's eyes widened in horror, Samuel's remained calm, and the crowd buzzed with awe. The chairman's gaze locked on Samuel. Carter, at sunrise, you will sit before us. If your vision holds, the empire itself may be yours. The city outside was bathed in a pale gold, skyscrapers cutting against the morning sky like solemn sentinels. Inside the tower, the boardroom glowed with a colder light-long glass windows, a circular mahogany table polished to perfection, and 20 chairs filled with the most powerful figures in global finance. Gregory Hemsworth sat hunched at the head, his eyes bloodshot, his tie loosened from a night without sleep. He tapped his fingers restlessly, each thud against the wood a desperate plea for control. Across from him sat Samuel Carter, calm, composed. His simple black suit carried no arrogance, only quiet strength. He did not fidget. He did not sweat. He simply waited. Chairman Watanabe entered, followed by the board. The room stilled as he placed a leather folder onto the table. His gaze swept the chamber. Last night revealed more than arrogance. It revealed truth. Today we must decide whose vision shall carry this empire forward. Gregory's voice cracked as he leaned forward. Chairman, you cannot be serious. This janitor, this nobody, cannot be considered. He humiliated me in my own gala, manipulated the crowd. Silence, the chairman cut sharply. You humiliated yourself. What Carter revealed was not a trick, but a mirror. The board members murmured, some nodding. Gregory's face flushed crimson. Samuel finally spoke, his voice low but steady. I did not come here to take what is yours, Gregory. I came to show what belongs to no one, man. Respect, dignity, and partnership. You mocked me because you thought I had nothing. Yet last night, I walked away with something greater than gold truth. His words sank into the heavy silence. One by one, board members leaned forward, their expressions softening, curiosity shifting into respect. Gregory slammed his palm on the table. Empty words. Where is his proof? Where are the deals, the numbers, the legacy? This company was built on my blood. The chairman opened the leather folder and slid a stack of papers forward. Legacy built on arrogance collapses. Here lies evidence of mismanaged funds, silenced staff, and contracts lost due to your pride. The investors you mocked have already begun pulling out. Gasps echoed around the room. Gregory's face paled. Lies, fabrications. Samuel remained silent, his eyes steady, letting Gregory unravel himself further. Richard Hawley, seated near the corner, spoke for the first time. I was there last night. I witnessed the mockery. I witnessed the dignity. If leadership is to be measured, then Carter has already proven himself beyond numbers. The board stirred, voices rising. Some nodded. Some whispered. Gregory's shoulders hunched tighter as if the walls themselves were closing in. Finally, the chairman raised a hand. Silence swept the chamber. It is time to decide. Each member shall vote Gregory Hemsworth or Samuel Carter. The first board member, a woman with sharp eyes and a diamond brooch, stood. Her voice rang clear. My vote, Samuel Carter. Applause did not follow, but a heavy silence pressed down, thicker than stone. The second member rose, an older man with a cane. Samuel Carter. Gregory's breathing quickened. Sweat beaded at his temple. You fools, you'll destroy everything. The third member rose. Gregory Hemsworth. Gregory sat taller, clinging to the single shred of hope. Yes, at least some of you understand. But the fourth stood. Samuel Carter. The fifth. Samuel Carter. The sixth. Samuel Carter. Each word chipped away at Gregory's empire. Each syllable a hammer strike against the crumbling wall of his pride. Samuel sat motionless, his hands folded, his gaze lowered as though carrying the weight of humility itself. Gregory, trembling, shot to his feet. His voice broke into a scream. You can't do this. I am this company. Without me, you are nothing. The chairman's gaze cut him down. Without dignity, Gregory, a man is already nothing. The vote continued, one after another. The tide was clear. Finally, the chairman looked across the table, his voice a blade of finality. By majority, the board favors Samuel Carter. Gregory Hemsworth is hereby stripped of his authority, pending final confirmation. Gasps exploded around the room. Gregory collapsed into his chair, his face drained of color, his hands shaking violently. Samuel finally raised his eyes. He spoke softly, but his words carried the weight of a new dawn. I never wanted to steal your crown, Gregory. Only to remind you that crowns rest not on heads, but on hearts. The boardroom filled with murmurs of awe. Investors whispered. Some even applauded softly. Gregory's head snapped up, eyes burning with hate. This isn't over, Carter. You think you've won, but I still have allies. And they will crush you before you take my place. His words echoed through the boardroom like a venomous hiss. The threat hung heavy in the air. Samuel did not flinch. His calm gaze met Gregory's trembling fury. Threats are the last refuge of the powerless. The chairman struck the gavel. This session is adjourned. At sunset, the final confirmation shall be announced. The room erupted in noise. Some shook Samuel's hand, others rushed to call their networks. Gregory sat alone, a broken man clinging to fading shadows. But his last words lingered like smoke in the air. He still had allies. The sun dipped low, painting the skyline in streaks of crimson and gold. From the top floors of Hemsworth Tower, the city below looked peaceful, unaware of the storm gathering inside. Samuel Carter stood by the window of a private lounge, hands folded behind his back. His reflection stared back at him, calm, steady, but carrying the weight of history. Behind him, Richard Hull entered quietly, closing the door. You should rest, Samuel, Richard said. The board has already chosen you. By sunset, it'll be official. Samuel shook his head gently. Power is never official, Richard. It is tested. Gregory's words still echo. Richard frowned. You mean his threat? Samuel turned, his eyes steady. Yes, he said he has allies. Pride may crumble, but desperation finds company. As if on cue, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Two men in sharp suits entered, board members who had voted against Gregory earlier. Their faces were tense, their eyes darting. Mr. Carter, one began cautiously, there is something you should know. Gregory has called in favors. Men with deep pockets and darker methods. He is not finished. Richard stiffened. Names? The man hesitated. I cannot say openly, but some sit at this very table. They believe Gregory can still return. Samuel absorbed the words in silence, his calm presence steadying the air. Finally, he said, truth does not fear shadows. But shadows do fear the dawn. The men exchanged uncertain glances before leaving. Richard stepped closer, lowering his voice. Samuel, you don't understand. These people can move markets overnight. They can ruin reputations with a whisper. Gregory still has teeth. Samuel's gaze returned to the city. Then let them bite. Dignity cannot be destroyed by teeth. Meanwhile, across the tower in a private suite, Gregory Hemsworth sat hunched over a glass of whiskey. His once pristine suit was wrinkled, his tie discarded. Around him stood 3 men, silent, sharp, dangerous. "You promised me loyalty," Gregory hissed, slamming the glass onto the table. "And now you let the board humiliate me? Replace me with a janitor?" One of the men, tall with slicked back hair, leaned forward. "The board voted. But money still talks, Gregory. And fear still works." Gregory's eyes lit up with venom. "Then make them afraid. Make Carter regret ever stepping into my world." "I don't care how," the man smirked. "Consider it done." Gregory's lips curled into a twisted smile. "Good. If I burn, then I'll drag him into the fire with me." Back in the lounge, Samuel sat quietly at the table, sipping tea. Richard paced behind him, restless. "You're too calm," Richard muttered. "You don't understand what men like Gregory do when they're cornered." Samuel set the cup down gently. "Calm is not blindness, Richard. It is clarity. Gregory's allies may strike, but desperation cannot outlast patience." Just then, the door burst open. A young assistant, pale and trembling, rushed in. "Mr. Carter." "Sir, the investors' accounts. There's been a sudden crash. Billions wiped in minutes." "Someone is orchestrating it," Richard cursed under his breath. "Gregory. He's pulling strings through back channels." The assistant's voice shook. "It's more than Gregory. Someone with influence is helping him." Samuel rose slowly, his tall figure commanding the room. His voice was calm, yet it carried a fire beneath. "Then tonight will not only test me, it will test them. Let the world see who builds with dignity and who destroys with fear." The assistant swallowed hard. "What should we do?" Samuel's gaze shifted to the golden envelope resting on the table, still carrying the weight of proof. His words were deliberate, steady. "We wait for sunset. We walk into that boardroom not as men trembling before power, but as men carrying it." Richard shook his head, frustrated yet in awe. "You really think calm words can stop what Gregory has unleashed?" Samuel's eyes narrowed slightly, the first spark of steel breaking through his calm. "No, Richard. But truth can." As the city darkened, storm clouds gathered. Across the skyline, financial tickers blinked red, markets spiraling as Gregory's allies pushed their sabotage into motion. And far below, in the shadows of the street, a black car pulled up to the tower. The door opened and a man in a tailored coat stepped out. His presence was cold, commanding, the kind of man whose handshake could topple economies. He whispered to his driver, "Tell Hemsworth the time has come. Tonight, Carter will fall." The driver nodded. The man adjusted his cufflinks and walked into the tower, his shadow stretching long across the marble floor. The boardroom was no longer just a place of business. It had become an arena. The storm outside raged, lightning cutting across the skyline as if the heavens themselves watched. Inside, the circular table glowed under soft lamps. Papers spread like battle lines. Gregory Hemsworth stormed in first, flanked by the powerful stranger who had arrived in the black car. Whispers rippled through the board. Some recognized him instantly: Dmitry Volkov, a financier whose influence stretched across continents. His presence meant danger. Gregory's voice cracked like thunder. "You thought you could strip me of power with votes? With papers? My allies still stand with me. And this man," he gestured toward Volkov, "controls rivers of gold you can't even fathom. With him, I rise again." The board stirred uneasily. Phones buzzed with breaking news. Markets crashing, stocks tumbling, fear spreading like wildfire. Gregory's lips twisted into a grin. "You see? While you applauded your janitor, I moved the world beneath your feet." Samuel sat silently at the far end of the table, hands folded, his calm eyes steady. His voice, when it came, was quiet yet uncheckable. "You moved the world, Gregory, but only to bury yourself beneath it." Gregory slammed a fist on the table. "Don't you dare preach to me. The chairman raised his hand, silencing the room. His gaze swept from Gregory to Volkov, then to Samuel. This board does not bend to fear. Tonight, truth will decide. Volkov stepped forward, his accent thick, his words sharp as glass. Truth? Truth is nothing without power. This Carter has none. He is dust. Gregory still commands the future. Samuel rose slowly, his tall figure casting a long shadow across the table. He reached into his jacket and placed the golden-sealed envelope back onto the wood. The crest gleamed under the lights. This, Samuel said softly, is power. Not because of wax, not because of gold, but because it carries trust. The trust of those who believe dignity still matters in a world drowning in arrogance. The board leaned forward, eyes fixed on the envelope. Gregory scoffed. Your paper trick again? Do you think this saves you? Samuel's calm gaze did not waver. Not a trick, a testament. While you spent the night feeding fire into markets, I spoke with those you ignored. Workers, investors, partners. This morning, they signed. He opened the envelope and slid out fresh contracts, stamped and notarized, representing billions in new partnerships. The world you tried to crash, Gregory, has already chosen its dawn. Gasps erupted around the room. Board members whispered fiercely. Phones buzzed again, but this time with green arrows, markets recovering. Stability returning as Samuel's contracts spread across global networks. Volkov's smirk faded. Gregory's face blanched. No, this isn't possible. You're nothing. You can't outmaneuver me. The chairman's voice boomed, final and sharp. Gregory Hemsworth, enough. You are stripped of all authority, your seat revoked. Your name struck from this board. Applause thundered through the chamber. Some investors stood, clapping fiercely, relief washing over their faces. The storm outside roared, thunder shaking the glass walls as though the heavens themselves approved. Gregory staggered, sweat dripping, his voice breaking. You've ruined me, Carter. You'll regret this. You'll regret. Samuel's voice cut through like a blade, calm but devastating. I regret nothing. I only regret that you never learned respect until it destroyed you. The words silenced Gregory more effectively than any gavel. His shoulders slumped, his arrogance dissolved. Guards stepped forward, escorting him out as his empire crumbled behind him. Volkov glared at Samuel, but the board's united applause forced him back. Even he knew when the tide was unstoppable. He turned sharply and left, his shadow swallowed by the storm. Silence followed. Then, one by one, the board members rose not to Gregory, but to Samuel. Some bowed. Others extended their hands. The room transformed into a coronation not of crowns, but of dignity. Chairman Watanabe stepped forward, placing a hand on Samuel's shoulder. His voice carried both authority and respect. Samuel Carter, the board has spoken. By sunrise, the empire is yours. Samuel bowed his head slightly, his calm voice resonant. The empire is not mine. It belongs to those who build it with respect. Tonight, arrogance fell. Tomorrow, dignity rises. Applause roared, echoing through the tower, spilling into the storm outside like thunder. Richard Hawley, eyes bright, leaned closer. You've done it, Samuel. Against every odd. You've done it. Samuel's gaze drifted back to the window, where the storm began to ease, a faint light breaking across the horizon. His final words carried the weight of an ending and the promise of a beginning. No, Richard. We did not end a story. We only turned a page. The world still waits for those who will write with respect, not arrogance. The storm clouds parted, sunlight spilling over the city like a benediction, and in the boardroom, the seal lay broken not of wax, but of arrogance.